Fergal McGill that afternoon saying if they don't fulfil the fixture, they're out of the championship. Somebody jumped the gun there. There was an element of you'll do what you're told. And it would strike me still 3-4 days later and 3-4 days into the whole thing that the primary reason that the GAA backed down here is, yes, the public sentiment, and two, probably the realisation they were on the wrong side of this rule.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's been a whole bizarre couple of days, really. And you talked about the initial GAA statement, or I think it's Fergal McGill, and when you heard that, you thought, wow, that seems to be coming out a bit strong. That's a bit entrenched. There's no room for negotiations. There's no room for any discussion there. This is the way it's going to be, regardless of any sort of conversation or any negotiation. And Kildare, with Cian O'Neill, were pretty much the same way. So there was the opening shots in this were let's say very determined or very set, and that led to just the chaos that followed over the last couple of days. And I think on both sides, this is a funny one for me, because I think the way the draw was and the way the rules are for the third round of the qualifiers, I think Kildare are right to fight for their venue. Absolutely 100%. I do think the GAA, though, to be fair to them, when they look at the crowd, the potential crowd that they look at the fixture, they look at the magnitude of the game, and then they look at the venue. That I can completely understand how they wouldn't see that venue is suitable for that game from a crowd point of view, from the dressing room point of view, from the media point of view. So I can when you stand back and look at it, you can see. I can completely understand both sides. I think the language and the rhetoric that was used on both sides just led it down this path, where it looked like that Kildare were being told what to do, and by default, the rest of the GAA were being told what to do. And then what you had is, and I heard Dave there mention a lightning rod or the tipping point, is there's been so many other issues just, there's been an undercurrent from the Super 8s to the club fixtures, to the GPA, to the CPA, all these little things. And that's all sort of welled up now into this Kildare pitch issue. And I think people are just aiming now at the GAA. A lot of it right, but I think some of it is overboard. There's stuff about elitism being thrown out. There's a lot of stuff, like I think Alan mentioned himself, that some members of the GAA, run by these guys that don't care about anything. That's unfair and untrue to say on a lot of occasions. So now that the emotion is out of it, I think when we stand back and look at it, I think Kildare are absolutely right to fight for the ground. But when I look at it now, I was talking to a couple of people at work today that have gone to every Mayo game over the last couple of years and brought their 4 kids and brought their family. They can't bring their kids to the game on Saturday, because of how tight it'll be and all that kind of stuff. No, that's a side issue, but that's really where it is. So I think Kildare got their venue well done. I think they need to now look at how come that is the only venue that they have for a county, a round 3 qualifier, a big game. So there's lots that have come out of this. Rights and wrongs on both sides for me.
I agree with James completely. I think the GAA are absolutely right in not wanting this game to be played in St. Conleth's Park. I don't think it's fit for purpose. I don't think there's any way that a round 3 qualifier involving 2 of the best supported teams in the country this late into the summer should be played in front of a crowd of under 9,000. I really don't think that should be happening. And if you are with a county that doesn't have a stadium that's capable of producing at least a 15 or 20,000 capacity, well, you shouldn't have a home game. But by contrast, the rules state that Kildare deserve a home game. And it's very difficult to argue with the stance that Kildare took on Monday. That's
the issue here, Brendan, isn't it? Because in 2012, Kildare gave up their home advantage, per se, to play Limerick in Portlaoise, and they won that game. They decided not to this time around. They had the rule on their side, even if a lot of people do agree it's a ground not fit for purpose for a game of this scale. But once they had the rule on their side, and Croke Park upped the ante in the way they did, and there was no backing down, the GAA probably realised we can't win this one pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was listening to Dave there with great interest, a very well-reasoned argument, and I disagree with pretty much every bit of it, Dave, to be quite honest. I don't think any consideration. I think the problem with all of this is, in the GAA, there's no sanctity for the idea of a home venue. We have neutral venues used all the time in provincial championships, in the qualifiers. We'll have 3 rounds of qualifiers with home and away venues. and then for round 4 it drops to a neutral venue, and then it's Croke Park and other neutral venues around the country for whatever, and then into Croke Park. You mentioned 2012, Joe. 2013, if you remember, there was a big kind of brouhaha that went all the way through the winter of 2012 into 2013 over Donegal playing Tyrone and Ballybuffet. And you remember the line that day was the same thing. We won't be able to get kids in. Kids will be on the terrace. They won't be able to see what's happening. Will somebody please think of the children and all this? Donegal stood their ground that day, and it wasn't even full up that day as well. I just think this whole thing of neutral venues, what we're seeing with Kildare this week is, it's off the charts in the reaction to it. But how often have we heard people talking about, we don't agree with this neutral venue, that's not fair on us, it's closer to these guys. Why are games not played on a home and away basis? It should be all the time. And not only are Kildare right to stand up for themselves this time, I would argue that any county board in Ireland that doesn't make the strongest possible case to have every possible game in their home venues, letting down their supporters, their players, and the countless businesses that support them financially on a 12-month basis. You should be fighting tooth and nail for every home game.
But Brendan, are you not letting down your supporters by denying thousands of them access to go and watch the people, the guys, their neighbours, their clubmates, their parishioners play at the highest level? Is that doing the supporters a great service?
For the county board, are you not trying to make sure that your team's the best possible opportunity of winning the game?
No, you specifically mentioned the supporters there. There are going to be thousands of young kids from both Mayo, but very much Kildare as well this weekend.
Brennan's point is, as the county board, is your duty of care to the fans, or is your duty of care to give the team the best chance to win?
Well, it's to everybody associated with GA in the county.
So in a case like this, you're going to have to make a choice. Now, they've come down on the side of the players in this instance, but it is a case, I would think, James, where sitting around a county board table, some people will feel, well, we have a duty of care to the fan base, and others will feel, no, we have to give the players and the management the best chance of winning.
Yeah, look, the way the rules are, the way it is, the way the balls were pulled out, Kildare the first out gets home venue, all that kind of stuff. Kildare are absolutely right. They're absolutely right. If I was manager of Kildare, how can I give my team the best competitive advantage? What suits us the most? Where makes sense? What can we do? That's what you're at. It's a competitive level of sport that we're talking about here. You know where the people train and do whatever they do to be in the best position they can to win games. So you're not going to throw. Keane O'Neill isn't going to throw something away that is surely, I don't know if the stats on this, but home advantage, particularly the way this game has been built up now, is going to be a plus for Kildare. So you wouldn't throw that away. I suppose the point I am making though is that you played in that venue, managing that venue. I remember we had to have our physios outside the dressing rooms, so the dressing rooms aren't big enough. That there's a lot of things around that thing that Kildare, I think, how come they're in that position? And I know that that's a different sort of argument that. With the playing base that they have and everything else, that they have in a venue that would be more suitable than this pitch. That's, I suppose, the point I'm making. But as it stands, the manager and the county board chairman obviously got together very, very early. There was a stance and then there was an agreement. It was all signed up to. They notified Croke Park. That was their position. And the way the rules are at the moment and the way the balls are pulled, they are correct.
Yeah. Brendan, on the point about Kildare going to the Gardaí and getting the thumbs up and even getting the throw-in time rescheduled for 7. As I said to Alan Milton, that looked to me like it was a very considered approach by both Kildare and the Gardaí. The Gardaí considered the situation. They said, well, 5 o'clock doesn't work with the derby, 7 does. We give you the thumbs up for 7. It was all in accordance with the Slattery report. I still don't really know why that was rejected by the GA on health and safety grounds. That seems like it was, well, to use Keane O'Neill's line, he called it a convenient untruth. And I'm struggling to see what has changed on health and safety grounds. Maybe Newbridge Garda Síochána will explain, but I'm struggling to see what has changed on health and safety grounds from Monday morning to Thursday, or what day is it? Wednesday. It's been a long week, so significantly.
Yeah, I think the GA statement at lunchtime today, Joe, kind of mentioned about, some changes. I think Alan Milton mentioned it to you earlier as well, about some changes to the health and safety plan for the day.
But not to interrupt, very briefly, if the Gardaí give it the thumbs up on Monday morning, I kind of trust them. I think they've considered it. I'm with them. I think that, if the Gardaí say it's fine, it's fine. It seems the GA didn't go back looking for any detail on it.
I would too. And look, straight away then I would be kind of, ticking that box and saying, grand, it's St. Conleth's, let's move on. But I don't think we should criticise the GAA for kind of saying, well, hold on, let's be sure to be sure. Once they got that, I can understand their reservations about Newbridge. I mean, you mentioned earlier you were at a game there a couple of years ago. I'm living down the road in Naas now. I've covered a good few games in St. Conleth's down the year, and getting into Newbridge on a regular
it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But being sure to be sure surely extends beyond having this thing wrapped up and sealed in a bow at Croke Park before lunchtime. Like they dismissed it. They actually just said, yeah, no, we're going to go at Croke Park. They didn't say, well, actually, we're going to talk to the Gardaí, we're going to talk to you in a bit more detail and be sure to be sure. I don't think they did that. I think they discounted it. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think it was handled badly, and I think it was when the furore kind of kicked up over it that they did realise they had to revisit it. I think Fergal McGill's input on Monday wasn't helpful. He's the director of games. Fergal's a very, very capable guy. I know him for a number of years in his role in the press office as well. I was surprised at what he said to the Irish Times that day, and I think that was kind of a bit of kindling to the whole situation. And it kind of painted the GAA, rightly or wrongly, as kind of, I think you were mentioning it earlier, as, you know, it's our way or the highway. And I think that was the wrong way to do it. So I do think it was badly handled. I do think, like yourself, when the Gardaí said we're happy with this, that it was good enough to go. And I think every other consideration is just, I think it's unnecessary, and I think it's all blown out of proportion because of that.
Brendan, James referenced Dave's point that this was a bit of a lightning rod, and it does feel like this was in part with the other 30 counties something of an anti-establishment vote, and people weighed in for all sorts of reasons. That notion of elitism has been talked about so much over the last number of years. What's your read on all that?
Yeah, again, I heard Alan Milton talking about it in reply to that, and understandably the guys who, the men and women who work in Croke Park would rail against that perception. And Alan's right in saying they're all involved in underage levels and everything else. I think it's understandable with an organisation as big and as unwieldy as the GAA that people in the nerve centre are going to be approaching things at a different level from somebody who's involved in the under-9 camogie team in Wexford or Clare or wherever it is. You know, I don't think, if there is elitism, I don't think it's anything that's deliberate or that's pushed through, but it's very difficult for people in, you know, the trenches, so to speak, that are working at this every day not to see the disconnect. And I think this is a good example of it. I think there might be a disconnect there that they're maybe blind to. I don't think it's on purpose. But it is something they have to address. I've spoken with you guys before about, you know, and everybody has, about the professionalism of the GAA and the road is going down. And I think that's something that they almost instinctively bat away as well. But there is that sense that the GAA is going down. I think the GAA is on the road to professionalism personally. But you'll talk to the guys in there and they'll swear blindly that it's not. And sometimes it's hardest to see something when you're up close, and those lads are up close. And it's very difficult, even with strategic plans and everything else, to step back and kind of take a look at yourself. And that holds for everybody, even on an individual basis. How hard is it for any of us to sit back and look at ourselves and be very honest with ourselves on a personal basis? So, you know, multiply that millions of times for an organisation like the GAA, and I do think it's something that they kind of have to get a little bit more attention to.
Yeah, James, you would feel, I know you feel it's overstated, the elitism thing, and it does seem like it's this catch-all term that can mean everything to anyone who uses it, and it's hard to argue against it. Maybe on the club situation, they've really neglected that whole area, but I'm not sure what they're able to do about, you know, counties who have managers and players who want to train like professionals. Like, you can't go out and tell them to stop.
Yeah, this elitism thing, you know, who is it that's saying it, and what is it, and what do they mean? It's thrown out there way too easy for me. There's amateur triathletes, there's young swimmers, there's sports people all over this country, cyclists that do general cycling, that are putting in more hours than GAA players. You know, so are they elitist in what they do? So I just think there needs to be some clarity on these people that are throwing out elitist GAA. Some of the GAA that I've seen, and some of the conditioning of some of the players at intercounty level I've seen, I wouldn't consider them elite athletes. You know, so we do need to be clear on that, because it's too easy to throw it out. Okay, can I just go back to your points, Joe? I think where this is going from is that it was bringing Kildare to Dublin. It was Dublin have their games 2 games at home.
Yeah.
There's all that. There's Dublin are doing so well. You know, we hear all the time that they get so much resources and there's so much money, and all this gets swelled up, and then people on social media, their stories go, and then and away it goes like a whirlwind. Before we know where we are, but if there is these cases, can we sit down and discuss them without all the emotion or the rhetoric or the rubbish that goes on around it, and just try work with the GAA to just clear up some of these things. The club one is a difficult one, because at the moment I'm involved in club management. With the under-20, the addition of the under-20 situation to the senior situation has just made it untenable, really, in that you could have a number of your under-20s that are involved in under-20 pounds now, which is on in the middle of summer, in the middle of the leaving cert, which is just crazy when you think of why it was developed.
Yeah.
And then you have senior players that could be gone, which as well. So you're left with less club players to try and work with during your season. So there is absolutely something that needs to be worked there, and something can be worked there. So that's where a lot of the focus needs to be. But I do think there's just this swell of all these things that maybe some people don't fully understand. It gets emotive, and then it goes out of control.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the untenable under-20 situation for sure at another date. One last point. Myself and Dave were just wondering this. Let's pretend alternative universe, you're Mayo manager. Is there a different game plan that you're bringing to a Crow Park versus a St. Conleth's Park?
It's going to be a very different game. Kildare. I'm sure Keane O'Neill has already switched modes, and it's a power source for Kildare. This whole situation. It absolutely is. It's a call to arms. Keane O'Neill and the team's performance, up to the last 2 games has been very poor, and they might have turned a corner. They had a very good battling win over Longford, who are a very good qualifier team. So this energy and the atmosphere that's there now, I'm sure they'll try and utilise this as much as they can, and it's going to be a big, highly emotive, supercharged game. And one person we haven't mentioned, and I don't know who it is yet, is David Gosling, but it's the referee, because there is going to be a higher excited state at this game from the fans, probably the players, the media generation here. The media interest will be huge, and it is a different atmosphere. It's 7 o'clock. It'll be a really hot day. All those kind of things are going to add to this occasion, which is going to be fantastic. But discipline and referees calls and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be a really, really tricky day for the referee, I would say. So, but as regards the game, I think Mayo will go out hard to try and suck the oxygen out of the crowd and that team, Kildare team, as quickly as they can, and try and grab control of that game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Listen, we're right out of time, but thanks so much for joining us. Brendan O'Brien from the Irish Examiner. Thanks, Brendan, and James Horan on the line as well. Short break.
Off the ball on News Talk.
Imagine escaping to an idyllic hideaway overlooking the sea. Walking hand in hand on endless deserted beaches. Wake up to the sound of the sea. Inchydoney Island Lodge and Spa. Clonakilty, West Cork.
Phone 1850 60 60 90 or log on to inchydoneyisland.com.
If you had 48 hours with a Mini, what would you get up to? Do you follow your head or your heart? Why not both? Turn a different corner. Find a new path. Take off on a mini adventure. Bring the whole family. Come on. And pick up a few friends along the way. Whatever challenge your lifestyle throws up, there's a Mini in the 182 range to match. Meet your match. Book your 48-hour test drive on mini.ie and find exceptional offers across the entire range.
Delicious cabinet designs, generous helpings of storage, and a menu of unique features expertly put together for you. Feast your eyes on a Cube kitchen. At Cube, we've been making fantastic kitchens for over 50 years. Call in today and we'll design one specially for you. See our kitchen and wardrobe ranges at cubeinteriors.com, plus our furniture collection including Caligaris, or call into one of our showrooms in Dublin and Cork. Cube, the shape of kitchens to come.
The summer sale at John